Hey friends, it is Jenna, what is up, and welcome back to the Board Game Garden, and welcome to a preview of this game right here. This is Emberheart. It is published by Mindclash Games, who's helping sponsor today's video, so a huge thank you to them. And it is designed by Adam Porter as well as Rob Fisher, and illustrations are from Andrew Bosley, which I'm sure you can recognize his illustrations from the box here as well as the board. But this is actually a game coming to you by Mindclash Games in their Mindclash Plays series, which they have a few games, I believe, in this series, one including Astra, which that is a game that I really do enjoy from them. So Emberheart here is going to be in the same kind of grouping of games where they are not necessarily as heavy, like complexity-wise, as all the other Mindclash games. So this one here plays 2 to 4 players. It plays in about an hour and 20 minutes and is ages 12 and up. So if you guys are interested in hearing more about Emberheart, I definitely recommend sticking around and watching the video. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoy. Also, hit the subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. I will mention now that Emberheart is going to be available for pre-order over on the Mindclash Games website, so definitely go and check it out there. I will have the link down below in the description box. So it is going to be up for pre-order, and then shortly after that it'll be going to retail. So yeah, keep your eyes out, and without further ado, let's get into this preview of Emberheart, shall we? Alright, so getting into my usual preview format, we are going to start off with a little bit of an aim of the game. Then I'm going to move into the components that I have here in front of me, which I do believe that this is close to the final product of Emberheart, which everything looks absolutely beautiful. I do have some additional kind of deluxeified components that if you do pre-order the game, you do get those included for free. But after the fact, when it comes to retail, those will be something that you'd have to purchase separately. Typically those would be punch outs, but these are some like wooden components for those different aid tokens, which we'll get into what those are. But yes, starting off with the aim of the game. So basically in Emberheart, we are set on the mystical island of Emberheart, and this is one of the only places left where dragons actually thrive and roam free, and sadly some not so great people have come onto the island, and they have a goal to capture as many dragons as possible, which as the champions we are trying to have that be avoided at all costs. We are trying to protect and save as many dragons as possible, and basically whoever at the end of the game has the most glory is going to be appointed the next dragon ambassador. So this is appointed by the king, and you are trying to, like I said, have the most glory at the end of the game in order to become the next dragon ambassador appointed by the king. So yes, that is a little bit of an aim of the game. The game is going to be played over 5 rounds, and each of those 5 rounds is going to have 4 different phases. There's going to be the action phase, the reward phase, the raid phase, as well as the reset phase. And overall, Emberheart is a worker placement game, and the worker placement in this game is fairly unique because it has a little bit of like a bidding aspect where the more workers that you place on a spot, it's going to be in descending order. So whoever places the most workers there will be able to claim rewards from that worker placement spot first, and then it kind of descends from there. And in each of these different locations where the worker placement spots are, you are going to be collecting different rewards, which are these different cards, and there's going to be things like heroes that are going to get you different abilities and endgame scoring. There's going to be garrisons, which are kind of like contracts that you're going to be fulfilling for glory. There are preserves, which you are going to be kind of pairing up with dragons in order to bring your companion dragon's attributes up to help with special abilities there. And then there's also going to be dragons that you're going to be saving from the poachers camp, as well as getting them from the mountain. And then there's also the tavern, which allows you to get more hirelings, which are your workers that you're going to be placing out. So there are lots of different worker placement spots with different cards that you're going to be adding into a tableau, with the hopes of of getting the most glory as possible to be the winner of Emberheart at the end of the game. So that is everything for an aim of the game, but let's get into all of the components here in front of me. So the first thing that you see is this large board in front of me. This is going to be divvied up into all of the different locations. So there are 6 different common locations. There is the Heroes Guild, where you're going to be gaining heroes. There is the Tavern, where you have your tavern cards. You have the Poachers Camp, which is one of the locations that you can save dragons from. You also have the Mountain here, another space for you to get dragons. You have the Preserve, which allows you to get to these different sanctuary preserve locations to be placing your dragons. And then you also have the Garrison here, which these are going to be the contracts that you're fulfilling, and thematically you are fighting the poachers off with the dragon riders, but you have the different contracts there for that. So those are the 6 different common locations, and then there's also 2 special locations here, which these 2 locations are going to give you instant benefits, whereas the other locations, the common locations, you're going to be placing out your workers or your parties and then waiting for the next phase, which is the reward phase, in order to actually claim your rewards. So that is everything for the locations on the board. There's also the flame track up here, which you're going to be going up and down the flame track in hopes that you're as low as possible at the end of the game. And then you also have this area here, which you have the Poachers raid cards, which I'll get into what those are. You also have the Ambassador aids here, which you're going to be drafting those throughout the game. And then you also have the round tracker here, which, like I said, you'll be playing over those 5 rounds. But that is everything for the main board. Victory points are counted at the end, so there's no victory points that you're going to be gaining throughout the game. You have all of the different cards here along the outside, and then each player is going to have their own player setup. You're going to select your different player color, and that gives you your 5 crest tokens, which these are going to be placed out on the worker placement spots on top of your party of hirelings. So I'll get into how that works. But you have 5 of those. You also have your dragon companion meeple here. So you're going to be able to, once per round, use your dragon companion on top of one of those parties in order to get some special abilities. And then also each player is going to have their own player board with their character and their companion dragon art on the side. And then you have the 3 attribute tracks for your companion dragon. So you have their strength, their senses, as well as their speed. And these are going to determine the different kind of special abilities and what you are going to get when you place out your companion dragon meeple. And then also at the end of the game, you will get victory points based off of where you are on those 3 tracks. And you're going to be able to go up on those tracks from a few different things that you're going to be doing throughout the game. So that is everything for each player. Additionally, you also have the first player marker here, which is going to be connected to the leader ambassador aid, which if you draft that, that is going to allow you to get the first player marker on the next round, and then it's also going to allow you to do something else, which I'll get into. But yes, that is the first player marker. And then lastly, we do have all of the different resources here. They're kind of a little bit off of camera right now, but I will show you some B-roll of them as I talk about them. But there are gear tokens, which these are going to allow you to swap out hirelings, which that is the other resource that we have here, which are the different hirelings. So there are 4 different types of hirelings. There is the basic hireling, which are grunts. Each player is actually going to start with 4 of these, and these are the most basic workers that you can get. But the only thing about these is that when you use them, they actually get discarded. So they don't come back to you after you use them in the worker placement part of the game. So you have the grunts, and then you also have the 3 types of experts. So you have the yellow hirelings, which are the scouts. You have the blue hirelings, which are the rangers, and you also have the purple hirelings, which are the wardens. And each of those different colors are going to be needed in order to place in specific spots on the board. So for the Poachers Camp, Tavern, and Heroes Guild, you're only going to be able to use either grunts, because grunts are wild. They can be used for any of them, but again, you have to discard them at the end of the round. So you're going to, for those 3 locations, have to use either grunts or scouts. And then for the garrison and the preserve, you're going to have to use rangers. And then lastly, for the mountain, you're going to have to use wardens. So every single location, aside from the 2 special locations, are going to need specific hirelings in order to place there. And then lastly, I forgot to mention, but there are some cards here for a 2-player mode, and the 2-player mode is simply just cards that you're going to be flipping over, and these are simply just going to tell you which locations on the board are going to be blocked for that round. So you have those, and then you also have a score pad for the end of the game. So that is everything for the components here in front of me. I do have the other 3 character boards over here, but let's get into exactly how Emberheart is played so you guys can get a better feel if this is something that you want to pick up. All right, so getting right into exactly how Emberheart is played, I will mention that Rodney over at Watch It Played does have an in-depth how to play. So if you guys want to see a whole in-depth how to play of this game, please go and check out his video. I am just going to be here to give you a brief overview of how the game is played so you can get a feel if it's something that you would enjoy. But like I said, the game is going to be played over 5 rounds, and each of those rounds you're going to have 4 different phases. First phase that we're going to get into is the action phase. So let's get into that. So during the action phase, there are 3 different things that you can decide to do on your turn. You can either play out a party of hirelings. So this is going to be a group of hirelings that you're going to place out onto one of the common locations. You can also place out one of your crests. This does not require any hirelings. It would just be one of your crests onto one of the special locations, or additionally, I can draft one of the aid tokens. The first thing that you can do is you can place out a party. So a party of hirelings is going to be a group of 1 to 5 hirelings, and you're going to be placing that party of hirelings on that respective number on the location that you want to go to. So like I said, there are 6 common locations, and each of the locations does have a specific type of hireling that you can place there. So for example, the Heroes Guild, you can only place scouts there, which are the yellow workers, or grunts, because grunts are always wild. So at the start of the game, each player starts with only grunts. So I could decide, I'm gonna place 2 of my grunts. I will take one of my crests, place that on top, and I'm going to place this in the tavern. So I'm going to place it on that number, so 2 grunts, I'll place it there, and that would be my turn. And we'll get into why I would want to play out specific numbers of hirelings and different things like that once we get into the reward phase, but for now, I would take a certain amount of hirelings and place it into one of the common locations. The next thing that you can do is you can place one of your crests on a special location. So you're just going to take your crest, you don't have to take any of your hirelings, and you would place it onto one of the 2 special locations. You have the warehouse, which would get you 2 gear tokens, which like I said, you can use the gear tokens to swap out the tokens for another type. So I could actually use a gear token in order to swap out one of my grunts for, let's say, a ranger or a scout or a warden. Or you can actually decide to downgrade it to a grunt if you would like, but most of the time you will probably be switching either from a grunt to one of the more expert hirelings, or you might be swapping between the expert ones. So changing a ranger into a warden or anything like that. So that is what the gear tokens will do. But the other location here is the fire station. And if I were to place my crest onto that location, I would immediately gain 4 more grunt tokens. So let me grab those from the supply. And then you will also have to put up your flame token. So that would move up 1 space. That would be everything for placing on one of the special locations. And then lastly, for the action phase, another thing you can do on your turn is you can decide to draft one of the 4 ambassador aid tokens. So there are 4 different ones. There is the red token here, which is the leader. You have the purple here, which is the defender. The yellow one here, which is the survivalist. And then you also have the green/teal one here, which is the healer. So if you were to draft the red one, this would just go over here, and this would say that you get the first player token on the next round, and then also you may decide to kind of retreat or take back one of your parties and then place out a new party. So this might be something that you do a little bit later in the round. if someone else or other people have gone to the specific spots and you have a feeling you may not get a reward there. So if you end up being at a location where others are going to be taking cards before you and you notice that you will most likely not get a card in the reward phase, you might decide to retreat that specific party and then place a new party somewhere else based off of where other people have placed their parties. So that will make a little bit more sense once we get to the reward phase. But yes, that is what you can do with the leader ambassador aid token. You have the defender, which this has to do with the raid cards here. So basically in the raid phase, which is the third phase of the round, you are going to be losing hirelings based off of one of these two cards. And if you draft the defender aid token, you are able to discard one of the two and kind of determine the one that is going to be scored during the raid phase. The third aid token here is the survivalist token, and this is first going to get you 1 gear token, so you immediately gain that. And then additionally, whenever there are ties in the mountain, which I'll get into that, you are going to be able to break ties. So you have some control there as well with being able to break ties with that. And then lastly, you have the healer token, which if you decide to draft that, that is going to allow you to move your flame token down twice, which again, I'll get into why you want it to be as low as possible when it comes to endgame scoring. But yes, throughout the game, you are going to be putting your flame up and down with different things. And this is a good way for you to heal the flames and move your flame token down. So that is everything for the tokens there. And that is the last thing that you can do on your turn during the action phase. And the end of the action phase is going to be triggered when the last aid token is drafted. So whenever a player drafts the last aid token, you are going to finish whatever round you were in, and then you're going to move on to the reward phase. So let's get into that. So in the reward phase, this is when you are going to be able to claim the rewards from each location. So you're going to be going as a group from location to location, and you're going to be resolving each of the locations. So you're going to start with the Heroes Guild, you're going to move to the tavern, then to the poachers camp, mountain, preserves, as well as the garrison. And you're going to be resolving each of these locations in the same way. Basically, you're going to look at all of the worker placement spots at each locations, and you're going to start with the player that has the biggest party. So it goes from 5 to 1, and you're going to start with them and then go in descending order. So the more people or the bigger your party is, the sooner you're going to be able to draft a card or claim a reward from that location. If it got to your turn and there were no more cards left, you are able to recall your party, which is a really nice part of the game. So you still do get your party back. You don't have to discard your grunts in that situation. And also you do get a little bit of a consolation prize, if you will, which you do gain 2 of the gear tokens. So yes, there's no fear of like going to location and then not getting anything. You do get your party back and then you do get 2 gear tokens. But kind of going through all these locations, I'll quickly explain what each of them do. They're all pretty straightforward. The first spot here is going to be the Heroes Guild. This is where you're going to be drafting heroes, and these are going to give you some special abilities and also some sort of endgame condition. So if you are able to meet the condition, you're going to get a certain amount of victory points for that hero, and that's going to be the number in the bottom right-hand corner. But the thing with heroes is that you cannot use their ability or score for their endgame condition unless you have a dragon of the same color connected to this hero. So you do have to give them a dragon of the species or color that they would like. So this hero here specifically needs a green dragon. So I could get this hero into my tableau, but I'm not going to be able to activate them or score for them until I have a green dragon connected to them. So that is how the heroes work. Next up, you have the tavern. This is how you're going to get more of your hirelings. So you're going to go to the tavern, and this is going to give you a certain amount of each hireling that you're going to gain. So I could draft this one here, which will get me 3 grunts, 1 scout, 1 ranger, and 1 warden. I would gain those, but then also it says here that I do have to put up my flame by 1. So some of these tavern cards are going to allow you to move your flame back. but then some of them do make you move it forward. It depends on, I guess, the strength of the card. Because this one gives you so many hirelings, it makes sense that it tells you to move the flame forward. But this one here only gives you 3 grunts and 1 warden, but it does allow you to move your flame back. Moving on to the poachers camp. This is one of the locations that you can go to get dragons, and like I said, you do need dragons for the heroes, and you will also need dragons for your preserve, or I guess you will have a preserve to be able to place a dragon in, because it's kind of like a little sanctuary for them. But the poachers camp is actually where you have the weakened dragons that have been captured by the poachers, and you were kind of saving them from them, which I think is adorable. And this is the only location that you can find exotic dragons, which are going to be wild dragons. So they are going to be any color that you would like, but they do become a specific color once you connect it to something. So this is a wild exotic dragon, but if I connect it to the green hero, it will become a green dragon, if that makes sense. But these ones do have victory points on them, but they are lower victory points. I believe the ones here are going to be 1 to 3 victory points. But moving on to the mountain, this is where you're going to be able to find the higher scoring or higher glory dragons. So the dragons here, I do believe, range from 2 victory points all the way up to 7 victory points, if I'm not mistaken. And you can, if you go here with a lot of wardens, be able to get more than 1 dragon, because basically here you're going to be moving up the levels of the mountain. So depending on how many wardens you place here, because obviously you can always place out a mixture of both the grunts and the wardens, but if you are able to have a party of majority wardens, you're going to be able to climb higher up the mountain. So once you go here, you are going to be drafting from the bottom row, and then whoever has wardens left over, so after you have discarded all of your grunts, if you have wardens left, those are going to be placed into this kind of hierarchy here. And this is where the survivalist comes into play. Because if there is a tie for the size of party, so let's say 2 people still had 3 wardens, because there is a tie here, whoever has the survivalist token will be able to kind of put in the order. So they will determine who kind of wins that tie. If there's a 3-way tie, the survivalist actually gets to put them in whatever order that they would like here. And then you will be able to draft from these 2 cards. You do have to pay an additional warden, and some of these dragons do make you move your flame up. Some of these dragons do make you pay an additional warden. So the higher you go up, the more wardens you're going to be paying. Depending on the dragons that you draft, you're going to have to kind of pay more stuff. And then eventually, once you get to the top, whatever party still has wardens and has the biggest party currently gets the first choice if they want to take the top dragon or not. Whoever gets that gets the top dragon. And additionally, they get to move up on one of the attribute tracks of their choice. So they'd be able to move up one of those 3 tracks, which I will get into what each of the attribute tracks gets you as you move up those tracks. But yes, that is everything for the mountain. I would say that the mountain's the most complicated of all of the locations. So that is the mountain there. You also have the preserve, which these are, like I said, little sanctuaries that you're going to be able to draft in order to place in dragons. And this is going to be another way for you to move up on these attribute tracks. So you have the blue, the red, and the green. If you are able to place in a dragon of that matching color, then you're going to be able to go up on that specific track. So if I'm able to put a red dragon in this red preserve here, I'll be able to move up on the strength track or the red track. So that is the preserve. And then you also have down here the garrison, which the garrison is always going to have one of each color. And there's going to be specific piles over here that as the game progresses and as you move through these 3 garrisons, the more difficult they're going to be and the more victory points they're going to get you, because they go in ascending order. So the first 3 here will give you 3 victory points, but as those get fulfilled, you're going to be adding in the higher and higher victory point ones, all the way up to the last one, which gets you 7 victory points. And these, like I said, are basically just contracts of what you need. So if you go to the garrison and draft this red garrison card here, you're going to need 1 red dragon and also 3 gear tokens. You'd be able to fulfill this contract and place that above your board. And then at the end of the game, you'll get the victory points that are on that card. And additionally, this is another way for you to move up the specific attribute tracks as well. And I will quickly mention that as you're resolving each of these locations, you are taking away your hirelings as well as your crests, and the grunts, like I said, will be discarded. And then any of your expert hirelings you will get back to be used either in the next round or to be discarded in the raid phase, which we'll get into. So yeah, that is everything for the reward phase. So moving into the last 2 phases, these ones are pretty straightforward. The first one is going to be the raid phase, which, like I said, whoever drafts the defender aid token discards one of the 2 raid cards, and then the other raid card is going to be the one that kind of scores, doesn't really score, but it like makes players pay things. So like the example before, if this was the card that wasn't drafted, this means that each player will have to discard 1 hireling, 1 expert hireling specifically, so either a warden, a ranger, or a scout. You will have to discard 1 per red dragon that you had. So at that time, you would count up how many red dragons you had, and then you would have to discard that many expert hirelings. If you were unable to discard a hireling, if you didn't have enough, you would actually have to move up your flame once per hireling that you couldn't pay for. So moving into the last phase, this is a pretty straightforward and typical reset phase. So looking at all of the locations aside from the garrison location, this one's a little bit special, which I'll get into, but all the other locations, whatever cards were not drafted will get discarded, and then you will fill up the spaces with new cards. For the garrison here, so for example, let's just say these 2 cards were gone. This green one here would stay, and then the other 2 would be filled with the next ones. So each of the different garrison cards does have to be kind of fulfilled before the next one of that color is going to be placed. So it really does depend on which one of these garrison cards each player is going for to kind of progress each of those piles to the higher ones. The last few things is whoever had the leader ambassador aid will get the first player token for the next round. The different aid tokens will be placed back into their respective spots. And then lastly, you will move the round tracker to the next round. Now, if it was the last round, you would skip the reset phase and you would just go straight into final scoring. So let's get into that. So getting into final scoring, each player is going to count up their glory for 5 different things. The first one is going to be their dragons. So these are dragons that you have attached to heroes as well as preserves, and even dragons that you don't have attached to things. You will gain victory points for those. You will also get victory points based off of where you are on the different attribute tracks, which I will quickly mention what each of them will give you. So firstly, the red track, which is the strength track, which I actually forgot to mention. Basically, these things are going to come into play when you place out your companion dragon meeple. So once per round, you can decide to place your dragon companion meeple onto one of the parties that you place out. So this one here that I placed out, I could decide to place my dragon on top of that party, and this will then allow me to kind of activate my different attribute tracks. So the first track here, the red track, is your strength attribute, and the higher that you get on this track, the kind of bigger discount you're going to get when playing out your parties. So specifically here, at the beginning of the game, you do get to go up 1 step on one of the 3 attribute tracks of your choice, and I chose to go up on the strength track. So I'm at the spot here that allows me to have a 1 hireling discount. So I actually have 2 hirelings here, but I could place it on the 3 because I get a 1 hireling discount. So that is that. The higher you go, the more of a discount you're going to get. So you can get 2 discount and then 3 discount. The next attribute track is the blue track, and that is going to be your senses track. And this is going to, as you get higher, allow you to get more gear tokens, but only if you place your dragon companion meeple on a party on a number 3. So it has to be on a 3 on one of the 6 locations here. So if I do that, then I would be able to get a certain amount of those gear tokens. The higher you are on here, if you place on a 3, you'll get more and more gear tokens, all the way up to being able to get 3 gear tokens, which is very helpful. And then the last attribute track here is the green track, and that is your speed attribute. And this is actually going to allow you to move your flame down. So the higher you go on here, if you are able to place out a party on a location that doesn't have anyone there, so if you are the first person to place onto a location, you can place it anywhere, but if you are the first player there, you're the only player there, you get to activate this attribute, which is the higher you are, the more you get to go down on your flame track. But yes, that is your Dragon Companion Meeple, and based off of where you end on these 3 attribute tracks, you are also going to get in-game victory points. Additionally, you will also score for your heroes. Granted, you do have a matching colored dragon connected to them, and also you met the endgame conditions. So let's just say with this example before, with this green hero, if I had a green dragon connected to this hero, if no other player has more rangers than you, you would get 7 victory points. So if you had a dragon connected and you were able to get that condition, scoring condition, you would gain victory points for that hero and any other heroes that you had. And then you also get victory points for any of the garrisons that you have tucked at the top of your board. And then lastly, you have the flame track. So basically at the end of the game, whoever is the highest on the flame track is going to get 0 victory points. And then based off of where you are compared to whoever has the highest, you are going to get victory points for that. So for example, if the person that had the highest was here and I was here, I am 1, 2, 3 behind them, I would get 3 victory points. But let's just say I was all the way down here, I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 behind them, I would actually get 20 victory points. So the more that you are behind the person with the highest flame, the more victory points you will get at the end of the game for the flame track. So once everyone was finished scoring the glory for each of those 5 different things, you will compare, and whoever has the most glory at the end of Emberheart will be the winner. All right, friends, so that is going to be everything for this preview of Emberheart. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, please give this video a big thumbs up. Also, hit the subscribe button down below if you've yet to do so. We'd love to have you here in the garden. Please comment down below if you have any questions, or if Emberheart sounds like something that you would enjoy and you're hoping to pick it up, please let me know down in the comments. And like I said before, Rodney over at Watch It Played does have a full how to play, so I will link that in the description box as well, along with the pre-order link for Emberheart. And yeah, I think that is everything. A huge thank you again to Mindclash Games for sponsoring today's video. I appreciate it very, very much. I love you guys. Remember, you are somebody's reason to smile, and I will see you in the next board game video. Bye, friends.